Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
And welcome back, everyone. I get so much insight from her. Good vibes, positivity in terms of everything she does, right down to the charitable stuff, which is just amazing. She is our Diamond of the Decade, and she is behind a wonderful mental health organization. She, her team, supporting so many people through so many different journeys. Today, we're going to focus on this thing called shadow work. Have you heard of it? You need to, if not. And we'll dig into that as soon as we introduce her. So great to have her back with us. Sherri Alexandrovich is back. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Very well. So last time we got together, you shared I'm going to call it a poem that you wrote. It was mind-blowing. Nothing of which I expected. It had so much insight, relatability, just connection in what you read. And you have another one today. As I learned before we get on here, you have a lot of them in all different topics and viewpoints. And then it struck me that this is your journal. You're writing of these poems and this insight and things, lessons that you share with us. This is your journal, isn't it?
It is. It's my journal, and it's also my healing. And so, like, when my mind is racing and can't stop, or feeling super flooded or overwhelmed with emotion, I tend to just write it out raw, and then I'll go back and I'll refine it, just so that it makes just a little bit more sense. And that's really just been how I've been able to, I think, just gain some insight into certain topics or certain themes that have been repeating in my life, and things that I talk about in my own therapy, or things that I know of, like, clients that have experienced, or, kind of just a way of using it as, yes, like you said, a journal, but like a healing journal for me.
So we're going to talk about shadow integration. That's the title of the piece that you're going to share with us. Before we even get there, for anybody that doesn't know what we all have them, what our shadow is, and how it applies to us. What is it?
So our shadow is our repressed, denied, or hidden parts of ourselves, or our personalities that we have either felt shamed of because other people have shamed us, or we have felt silenced by if we've been in an abusive, toxic, or manipulative relationship, or parts of ourselves that we might feel embarrassed about. We all possess multiple parts of who we are. And so the important element is to integrate all parts of our shadow, because we are not whole unless we have an ability to accept all of who we are. And sometimes what happens is when we have certain parts of ourselves, our shadow parts, that we've repressed for ourselves because we feel like, society doesn't accept them, those are things that we will typically find are triggering in other people when they possess that specific personality or trait. And so whenever we're having some sort of response that is disproportionate to the event, that's always a trigger for us to stop and say something else is going on. And so when it comes to shadow work, it's really just about accepting and embracing all of who we are. And then the integration piece of it is to integrate it back into ourselves and be able to find a way to kind of move through life with conscious awareness.
So if we thought hypothetically here, let's say you're somebody that grew up maybe in an abusive household, and then maybe you had an abusive partner. Maybe you got bullied when you were younger. All of these little things here, is it safe to say that those are our shadows following us around, and they're talking to us, i.e., when you get triggered with something presents, it's tying back to this shadow with us. And as many times, the two-part question, that's that. And as many times the shadow, the kid inside of you that didn't get healed, heard, etc.
So two parts to that. Actually, I have three answers for that. So yes, and yes. And there's kind of more that goes with that. So when you talk about being in a traumatic household, growing up abusive parents, toxic abusive relationship, and or being bullied in school. So the part of us that would be our shadow would have been the part of us that didn't stand up for ourselves. It would have been the part of us, our voice. That's the part that we have learned that our voice is not important. We are not important. We are not worthy of love. We are not worthy of being stood up for. Those parts of us in our shadow work is what we no longer will value, or we don't feel that we can bring them forward because life has taught us to silence that. So there's that piece of it. That's the part of our personality that we have learned to silence over the years. Or we have become outwardly angry or aggressive. And that's a byproduct of, again, the same situation in which you just described, but it just looking at it from a different perspective. And again, that would be something that somebody else would then see as our dark side or a bad part of us. But if you look down deep inside of that, what did that anger serve us? What it did was it gave us the opportunity to protect us when nobody else seemed that they were going to. So we used that anger as a way of being protected, and other people might view that as negative, but having the ability to stand up for ourselves is not negative when it's used in the right way. And so the toxicity, the trauma, the event may have shaped how we use that particular skill. Does that make sense?
Totally. And I often connect the shadow to, like when you're walking outside, there's usually a shadow on the ground if the sun is out. It's usually smaller, you know? And I always think of that, all right, that's the little person inside of you that didn't get heard, that, you know, their feelings got squashed, or they didn't get a chance, or they couldn't, for whatever the reason, speak up for themselves. And before we get into your piece, within this thing called shadow work, how do you describe that? I was just going to tell you what I thought it was, and I've done the work.
Yeah.
And it's a continuing basis. It doesn't end, you know, at any time. How would you describe that shadow work?
The shadow work is really about embracing all of who we are and going into it with this conscious, mindful awareness of that we embody multiple parts to our personality, and all of them need to be cherished and loved and brought forward in order to become a whole person, because we're not just comprised of niceness and rainbows and sunshines and all of the wonderful things in the world, right? We're human beings who have all of that. We have anger, we have sadness, we have happiness. We possess all of that. So our shadows are the parts of us that we don't accept. And in order to do the work, it's really looking at who we are as a whole without guilt, without shame, and without blame. Because once we start to integrate all of that self-disparaging talk, all of that negativity, we then silence those parts of us. Therefore, keeping parts of us at bay or not bringing them forward. And that's what the shadow integration is all about. It's about integrating all of who we are and feeling confident and strong, and then having the ability to consciously decide what no longer serves us.
Like anything in life, it's work to confront, but beautiful transformation takes place once you deal with the shadow, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, it does.
So could you please share with us, this is shadow integration?
Yes. Okay. Shadow integration. It begins when you stop arguing with what you see, when maybe I'm wrong loosens its grip and your knowing is allowed to breathe. The shadow is not evil. It is the part of you that learned silence for safety, softness for survival, self-assure for love. It holds your anger, not as violence, but as truth unspoken. It holds your no, your leave, your enough. Integration is not becoming cold, it's becoming complete. You stop calling intuition an overreaction. You stop naming pain and empathy's burden. You let discernment stand beside compassion. Before, you absorbed everything, felt it, carried it, mistook endurance for goodness. Now you filter, you choose, You feel deeply without drowning. And when the betrayal finally cuts, it's not the wound itself that devastates us. It's the realization that we recognize the signs and choose harmony over truth. We saw the manipulation, we felt the lies, but our faith in goodness, our need to believe, our fear of being dismissed made us deny our own sight. When that denial shatters, something else is born. The empath does not rage. We go still. We integrate. Every lie once believed, every agenda once hidden, every instinct once silenced returns, not as pain, but as clarity.
Can you read the last sentence again?
Every lie once believed, every agenda once hidden, every instinct once silenced returns, not as pain, but as clarity.
That's powerful, isn't it?
Yeah. So I feel like that's a good kind of description of how we view our shadow, how it has become silenced, and the importance of what happens when we integrate it.
When you say integrate it, do you mean integrate it within your everyday life?
Integrate it with who we are as a person, not necessarily in our everyday life, but just integrate it as us as a whole. So if we can envision who we are as a person and how multifaceted we are, there's just so many parts of us that don't show up in every moment or every day or every minute. It's all situational. Our protective parts show up when we need them to. Our empathetic parts show up when we need those to. So each part of our personality has a different service, and all of them will serve us in its right purpose, in its right place. It's when those parts of us get fractured and dismissed, or get buried, or get told that they are not important or not valued. That's when we take those parts and we hide them away, and they become now our shadow.
So when I referred to walking outside and seeing your shadow on the ground, and that being what we're talking about, your shadow, just using that as an analogy, I often think of that as a separate entity. Oh, that's my shadow, and I'm here. But if you look at it that way, you're never going to move your life forward. You have to connect the two of them. It is your shadow. It is part of you. It's not separate. You might think it's a little separate, but no, it is everything you do I want to say everything and every day on a daily basis, but much of our lives, the shadow shows up very often. Shall we say that? Very often. We might not even know it's showing up.
Right. And if you think about it, our shadow, if you use the analogy that you're talking about, the shadow, when you're outside, it's a smaller subset of you, but the shadow doesn't exist without you.
Truth. Wow.
So it's not separate, right? It's integrated. It's all one, because you cannot go out in the sun and not see your shadow. You can't see your shadow without seeing yourself. So they are two parts of ourselves, but they're fragmented in some cases, because we have learned over the years that being all of who we are is too much. And we have been told that we need to be quiet, that we are overly sensitive, that our opinion doesn't matter, or when we've had an opinion, it's been dismissed, or it's been beaten down, or it's been manipulated and lied to. And so it's really hard for us to survivors who have evolved, and grown and survived different parts of trauma. We've taken those pieces of us and we've been ashamed of them, because that's what we've been taught. That's what we've been conditioned. That's what we've been told, is that you are too much. If you voice your opinion, it's not important. So we have stayed silent because that has been what's safe for us. And a lot of what kind of develops out of that is a dissociative piece. And so I've done a lot of kind of writings about what that looks like too. And I kind of refer to that as the protector when I talk about the dissociative pieces, because the protector is who steps in when we've had to endure all of that. And they're the person inside of us. Again, it's all who we are. And I'm not talking about multiple personalities here. I'm talking about parts of us that have had to be stand up to be more important, parts of us that weren't strong enough or able to move forward and be able to stand up and say, no, hey, I matter, or that's important, or that's not okay. And, I think part of what I have really in my own self have come through a lot of these writings that I've done is, when the empath finally has that aha moment, when you finally realize that you are starting to come onto the other side, you carry that level of guilt and shame because you knew the whole time, but you just were powerless to stop it, or you felt like you couldn't stop it. And then when you kind of get to where you need to do, and you finally make that decision that this is where, this is no longer okay for me. This part of this relationship, this whatever it is that you're experiencing no longer serves me. And then you live with, wow, why did I stay for so long? Why did I do that? Why did I make that choice? We have reasons why we did it. And that's why the shadow work is so important, because when we move out of these toxic relationships, we need to be able to hold ourselves with a level of understanding and empathy, the same way that we would hold other people.
It is profound once you make that connection. And it doesn't even have to be leaving a toxic relationship. It could be just a relationship that you think is one thing. And then once you integrate the shadow, do the work, you see it for something else. And I don't mean this in a negative way, but you see it potentially for what it really is, where you thought that somebody was this, and maybe they sold themselves to who they are. And then you look, well, that's not really who they are. And that doesn't align with who I am. And not that you want to toss them to the curb, but maybe just cut back a little bit instead of giving them all your focus and energy and time, because it really isn't who you are. But you thought it was because you looked at it through the lens of the past. But now you're looking at it through the lens of shadow integration.
Right. And you're looking at it through the lens of positivity. So a person who is a sensitive, empathic person will always want to see the good in someone. And so even when you see the red flags, or even when you see the signs and you say, I don't know, that doesn't feel right for me, or you just have this like little kind of feeling inside the pit of your stomach that something's not right, but your need to want to see the good in people. And I know for me, I can speak personally that this hands down is something that I experience all the time.
You're driving me crazy because you're speaking my language.
Yeah.
And I've gotten, I'm going to say burned a number of times because I want to see the good in somebody, and I may trust you with a handshake, and that's it. That's the way it is. And if you compromise my integrity, that hurts. Like, how dare? Because it's squeaky clean. I try to keep it squeaky clean, and it is, for that reason. But yes, you want to see the good in people. And you said something I was going to ask you about, and you started mentioning it. When somebody's highly empathic, are they also sensitive for themselves? Like, so many times somebody will say, well, Joe or Jane, they're so sensitive. They're very sensitive. But is that because they're an empath and they're also sensitive about themselves? They're very tuned into themselves and their feelings. They might not know all of it because they haven't maybe figured out the shadow. That makes sense?
So I do think there's a lot. Yeah, it does make sense. And I think there's a lot of similarities between the empath and the sensitive person. I think that I think that you could, I don't know clinically that I would say that they are one and the same. I think that there's some work that might differentiate the two of them. But from a personal perspective, I do believe that every empath has that sensitive side to them. And I also do believe that the sensitive individual has that sense of awareness that makes you an empath. So for me, on a personal level, I do think that they are integrated into each other for sure. And I think that once the empath who has not really embraced or had the shadow integration work done, then that's when they take things to a level of self-sacrifice, because they are looking outwardly so much to take care of everybody else, because their own experience of never being cared for or not being loved or not feeling good enough or whatever the situation is, and regardless of where that story came from, whether it was, like you said earlier, being bullied at school, toxic relationship, parents, whatever, wherever that came from, you've learned to kind of silence that and not allow that to foster. And so the sensitive empath will sit back, and it's not that they're not aware. They're observant. They're extremely observant. They see, hear, and know much more because they're not busy talking. They're busy listening. They're busy absorbing. And so they've survived their trauma. They've survived whatever they've experienced because they've learned how to. Their silence was not one that just was of shut down. It was one of learning. It was one of experiencing. It was one of knowledge to help them survive. And I think that people don't really truly, genuinely understand that, that those are the people who are really figuring it out. How do I survive in this place that we call the world in society, and be put down for all of the parts of us that people have not accepted? And so it all kind of goes together. All of this, the empath, the shadow integration work, the sensitivity, all of those are really kind of combined in this one big melting pot that is who we are as a person.
And the shadow exists in all of us, not just the empath. We're just kind of putting a focus on that for the moment. But it kind of is a vicious cycle, because if you are an empath and you didn't get your emotional needs met as a kid, and you could have been bullied, and nobody did anything about it, or nobody listened, and all of that. Now you get to adulthood, and there's other things that might have transpired in your childhood. But then I would imagine you go above and beyond to take care of everybody but yourself, because you don't want to lose those people around you, because you're hoping that they will show you love and all of that. So, you overcompensate, and in doing that, without you knowing you're doing it, you take away from yourself. It's kind of a vicious cycle.
Absolutely. And the other piece of that too is we do go above and beyond because we know what it feels like to be discarded. We know what it feels like to not be worthy. We know what it feels like to not be treated. So what we do is we overcompensate, right? So that's a large part of what happens when your needs have not been met, is that one of the avenues that you take is being the person who takes care of everything, who's always in charge. But then you don't rest. You don't have that moment for yourself, because your priority is not you. It's always somebody else. It's always, how are you going to take care of that person? And the guilt of inflicting in your mind what it is to somebody else that you've experienced. So we get hypervigilant, we get overly aware, and sometimes we go down a rabbit hole. And I've done some writings on both rabbit hole and the empath, what happens when the empath wakes, and where do we go from here, and what happens when we see the light, and work on all of that forgiveness for yourself, for the things that you've had to survive and the choices that you've made in order to survive.
Whoa. I think in music, song just downloaded, you said one word, and then I got a song. I'm going to share just a piece of the song.
Okay.
The word was discarded. And I remember that word from this song lyrics, just like that, back in my head. Came out in the 80s. It was called In a Big Country by Big Country. And it's a Scottish band. Has a very Scottish influence, but it's a poppy rockin' song. So take that look out of here. It doesn't fit you, because it's happened doesn't mean you've been discarded. Pull up your head off the floor, come up screaming, cry out for everything you ever might have wanted. That's just a piece of that song. There's so much in there.
Wow.
Sadly, the person that wrote that song took their life.
Oh.
But everything they said, even at the beginning of the song, as the intro's going with these loud drums and pumping you up, come out screaming was his phrase. And I guess after a while, he didn't, because it took over his life. But that song, if you look at all the lyrics, In a Big Country by Big Country.
I'm going to write that down.
Please, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, or even just listen to the song, but you don't even have to. and just look at the lyrics. And it's like, whoa, I'll go to the gym. I'll play it 10 times in a row. It's something,
wow.
it's like just the music alone pumps you up. And then you got those lyrics. You said that word discarded. That was a trigger.
Yeah.
It's like right away.
And so that's interesting. I've been reading a book by Dr. Barrett called Where Our Emotions Come From. And a lot of that is association and imprinting. And exactly what you just talked about, we could do a whole segment on that we hear one word and how it resonates with us based on an experience. And so that experience then shapes a reaction. And then that reaction continues to perpetuate itself over and over again until we reframe it and or change its association. And that's like such a powerful thing that our brains can do, is that because if you think about when we're born, we don't have really the ability to associate with any emotion. We cry when we're hurt, but then we learn that we cry and a caregiver comes. Mm-hmm. So those are learned emotions. Those are learned reactions that we have. And that happens with everything as we continue to evolve. And so part of what I've been reading that like Dr. Barrett was doing when she was trying to like really understand where human emotions come from, and she kind of did a bunch of different experiments. You couldn't go by sound, you couldn't go by words, you couldn't go by other people, because everybody's experience is different. And every culture is different in how they perceive something. Sure. So you have to go by what is that person's experience, and then how is that tied to their particular outcome? Because if you think about it, we all might react angry in a sense that it's a negative reaction, but how we each express our anger is very different. It's all based on how we were raised, what is our culture, what has society taught us, what was the outcome of that. How was it perceived? Were we scolded? Makes a difference.
That the word thing, that back in the day they did word association. Mm-hmm. I almost think it might be interesting to do that. We come up with 4 words for each other, and what do you associate? The discarded thing, it's resonating for a reason. Probably because when I was younger, I felt like I was discarded in some regards. After the shadow work, no blanking way anymore.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that's why that song connects.
Yeah. Resonates for you. Absolutely. Yep. And everybody's experience is different. So everybody's emotion or attachment or reaction to everything is different. Again, going back to why it's so important for us as individuals to do the work based on who am I? Who am I, Sherri? Yeah. And who am I comprised of? And what am I comprised of? And what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses for myself? Not because somebody else has told me, but because those are things that either serve me or don't serve me. And I either want to shape or reshape, or I want to just embrace. That's my journey. Those are my individual choices. And when we allow other people to make those choices for us out of shame, out of manipulation, out of lies, now we're just living in our shadow. We have no longer integrated our shadow.
Thank you for the insight. Beautiful piece again.
Oh, thank you.
It's just so interesting. I had this talk with a art therapist that I met, and I found that anything I do, like artistic, creative, whatever it is, it always has to have an outlet. Like I can't just create for myself and then put it aside. It's either I create something and I learn, a new technique, AI, whatever. But it always comes down to, I want to share whatever I create to help people, or whatever the goal is, just to share. This is what you're doing. I journal at home. Ain't nobody going to see that. What you're doing is you're sharing it and inspiring and helping us learn about this. And that's a beautiful thing. Love it.
Thank you. Well, some of my pieces are too dark to share on the radio, but
either way,
some of them are helpful.
it's either way, it's helpful either to you or, in this case, to the rest of us. New Beginnings. WC.com is your website. You're there to walk that journey with pretty much anybody, anywhere. Sherri Ann, thank you for today. Wow. Wow. Like, I had no idea that you wrote that much stuff.
Yeah. I have 18 of them so far.
You're good. You're good. They're like, even the last week when you read that piece, and you had just finished it. Like, it sounds like it was, crafted and polished over a long period of time. Good stuff. I appreciate it. Love what you do. Love you. And we'll talk next time. Okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hi, this is Terry Crews, actor, former football player, game show host, father of 5, and all-around big dude. I'm also an expert on drama. I know all kinds of drama. There's the good kind that comes with having a house full of kids. There's the bad kind like season-ending injuries. There's the necessary kind like having an agent in Hollywood. And there's silly drama like the drama around my percolating pectorals. And then there's the drama you can skip.
Skip the drama that comes with not having your high school diploma or equivalency. Find free adult education classes near you and finish your high school diploma. Visit finishyourdiploma.org.
Or text diploma to 97779. Message and data rates may apply. Reply STOP to opt out. That's diploma to 97779. And leave the drama to actors like me.
Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.